Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us. You just got through watching the very first NXT 2.0 pay per view, and you're now watching the very last Two Bros Wrestling show of 2021. Thank you for tuning in, staying up late with us. I'm your host, Kevin. Joining us again this week, Dave. It feels weird to keep calling you a friend of the show because you're definitely more than just a friend of the show. You've helped us out a lot. You're here with us again tonight. It's really appropriate because first time you joined us was to look at NXT 2.0 as a brand and what we thought of how things were going. So it's kind of full circle to have you here on the last show, 2021, talking about this pay-per-view.
Yeah, it was one I was definitely looking forward to. I've always been an NXT guy, so it's one I'm looking forward to talking about.
Well, let's get right into talking about it, folks. If you haven't tuned into the Two Bros Wrestling show before for our pay-per-view reviews, what we do, we first will give you our analysis without spoilers in case you didn't see the show and want to know if you should, and then we'll get into some match-by-match breakdowns. So, David, let's look at the first thing I really wanted to ask you about the pay-per-view before we even get into whether or not people should watch it is, should they have even had it? It's awfully early in NXT 2.0's run. Was it time for a pay-per-view, much less one like War Games?
I think there's nothing wrong with them doing a pay-per-view. I think maybe they would have been better served to push it maybe a little bit longer. I would have liked to have seen more build towards these matches. It definitely did feel kind of rushed. Yeah. But maybe I would have given it another month, but I'm glad to see one.
For me, I think it's a little unfortunate that the timing wise had it that the very first 2.0 pay-per-view was War Games. Typically, War Games has ended NXT's calendar year, and oftentimes as the end of the year pay-per-view, it was the conclusion of a lot of feuds that they have had running for a while. The blood feuds, the things that required you to get men and women in this cage because there was no other way to settle it. Considering most of the issues that were being settled tonight were only weeks old and not months old, War Games might seem like a bit of an extreme solution to a lack of problems.
Definitely. They definitely could have used a lot more build, and it didn't really have a whole lot of meaning, as much meaning as we would have liked to have seen. But considering the small build that they had towards these matches, I thought they pulled it off about as well as they could have.
That said, I agree. I kind of got a little more out of it than I expected I would. In the end, I think overall the talent overcame the lack of build and really the lack of knowledge of us, the fans, of a lot of these characters and where they're coming from just yet. That is really not on the performer's fault. Although I will say that the few clunky moments and the things that seem to slow things down a bit tended to happen tonight when the younger kids were in the ring. And I guess that is to be expected because they are still young and learning, but probably also a sign that they maybe shouldn't let some of these veterans have their contracts expire just yet, because these are the folks that sort of save the show, in my opinion. But to me, definitely it's one that you should see. I would say non-spoiler. It wasn't to take over standards, so please don't use that bar. It's good that they've got rid of the word takeover because maybe they understood that comes with some pressure that these folks don't need right now. On the other hand, it's an interesting night of television. I mean, the very first pay-per-view, it's really sort of a start of a new era, so you kind of have to tune in from the beginning, I think, Dave.
Yeah, and while I will say I agree that probably this pay-per-view didn't match up to, takeovers of NXT's past, maybe you might disagree with me on this, but I still feel like NXT's pay-per-view was a better show than the main roster shows have been for a while.
I enjoyed this, even with its shortcomings, more than I did Survivor Series, which if you all watched our review that we did on that a few weeks ago, we thought had a couple of good moments and yet still a lot of shortcomings. Tonight, I would definitely say check out that main event match no matter what you do, because that was my match of the night. But overall, check it out because it's history. It's the first NXT 2.0 pay-per-view, and it was better than maybe it had any right to be.
Absolutely. I mean, I might be a little biased, but like I said, I would watch this pay-per-view over a lot of the main roster pay-per-views that they've had lately.
What do you say? Let's get into it.
Let's do it.
Let's get into it. All right, folks, we're entering spoiler territory. So this is where you pause us on Facebook and YouTube, and then you come back after you watch the pay-per-view and see if you agree with us. If you watch tonight's show, tune in, chime in rather, and let us know if you agree with what we're saying here or not. Let's start with the first match. We go initially. We start out with the women's War Games contest, and the winner of that was Io Shirai, Raquel Gonzalez, Cora Jade, Kaylee Ray over Toxic Attraction and Dakota Kai. David, before we even get into the specifics of this match, it's probably good to call out to those folks watching at home, particularly if you didn't see the pay-per-view, that there was some changes into the sort of design structure of the match, in that traditionally we have the cages as the competitors who are not in the match are waiting on the ramp. This time they had them at the top of the arena so that when folks got released from the cages, they came down through the crowd. Maybe this was a design to keep these folks on camera the whole time because they face the hard camera, or it could be the fact that now that they're in the performance center having to set up 2 rings and 2 cages, that's the most logical place they had room. One way or the other, what did you think of that look? Did you like that change or no?
I liked it. I liked being able to see them throughout the course of the match. I mean, even though they were a little bit far away, I also liked kind of the webcam setup that they had inside of the cage so that you could kind of see their reactions in the cage during the match. I thought that was really cool.
Yeah. I kind of like the visual too. Keep everybody on screen for a majority of the contest, and it just looked kind of cool to see the performers come down through the crowd. So I kind of like that change too. To me, if there's anything that could be said about this match, is I thought it maybe started out not slow. It just was kind of there for me. At first, it picked up big time by the time all the women got in the match. But I think part of that for me is the fact that there really is no long-standing issues at play here. I know at one point Vic Joseph on commentary kind of tried to force it down our throats. At one point, I marked him here saying, the one thing that each woman in this match has in common is their mutual hatred for one another. And I thought, but do they really? Dakota Kai, Raquel Gonzalez, yes. You could say those 2 women are definitely longtime rivals who hate one another. The other females in the match, all their issues have taken place on TV in the last couple of weeks. So this was one of those that maybe didn't need the War Games concept, but hey, it's War Games, so what are you going to do? And I think that for that reason, at first, it took me a little bit to sort of get into where they were going with the contest. Did you have that issue at all, or did you think it was up from the start?
No, I mean it's definitely a little slow going in the beginning, and I think that's going to be the case when you start off with only one-on-one for several minutes, and somebody's coming in one at a time every few minutes. I like it a lot better than the Survivor style elimination match that we had a couple of weeks ago. But I think these kind of matches are going to start slow and they're going to build quickly once the competitors are in the ring.
I really liked the spot once all the competitors were in the ring. I thought Io Shirai had a cool looking spot where she does a handstand on the ropes in the corner turnbuckle and then brings her body down into the trash can lid to smash her opponent in the corner. I thought that looked good. To me, the maybe even the spot of the night, but definitely the spot of this match had to be Cora Jade, who to me was made a star tonight. She came out of this looking like $1 million because call it great selling or a legit injury that she recovered quickly from and called off the medics and then went with it. But at first I thought that her senton, which looked great, fantastic off the top, and through the table, I thought she'd really pop that shoulder out. Did you believe it, or did you know it was a work?
I mean, as soon as they didn't take her out of the ring, I kind of figured it was a work, but she sold it pretty well.
Up until the point that Io Shirai decided that she was going to pop it back in for her. That's up until then. I thought, oh man, she is legitimately hurt. They keep showing the crowd instead of what's going on in the ring. The performers seem to really be checking on her. Even her opponents seem to have stopped, and they really made it look like she had a legit injury in the middle of the ring. So kudos to all involved there, because that really had me pretty cynical, old school wrestling fan marking out there and buying into what she was selling.
Yeah, it was definitely it was definitely a coming out party for Cora Jade, like you said. She's, when I first saw her the first several weeks she was on, and I think Doug might have made the comment that she seemed kind of like a female Darby Allin with the skateboard and all that. And then they set her up in the first few weeks with that, romance angle with that guy that they eventually cut.
Yeah.
I forget his name, but they cut him. There was a romance angle going on with them for a few weeks, but now she's officially reached that next level, and she's, the upper tier of the female talent that they have in NXT.
I know she's only 20, which is also kind of amazing as well. If this is the floor, what's the ceiling on
Right.
a 20-year-old? She gives me Paige vibes, and maybe it's because of the pale punk rock kind of emo looking gimmick, or the fact that she's starting, as a teenager essentially, which is what kind of Paige backstory is as well. But there's just something that gives me that same feeling for her. And tonight was a coming out party in this match. I think that this was all about making her look like the next big thing.
The only thing I will say that was a little strange to me about this match is they had a section towards the end where it looked like Kaylee Ray might have been about to turn on her team.
That was odd.
Yeah, and the camera angles were even kind of weird, where when she took a shot with a kendo stick, I originally thought she did hit one of her own people. So it took me kind of a few minutes to realize that she hadn't turned and she actually was still on their side, because it was kind of confusing. I didn't understand the point of making it seem like she was about to double cross.
I don't know if that was miscommunication by the women in the ring, or poor editing, or the directors calling what shot the show, but it did leave the at-home audience a bit confused as to what was supposed to be happening in that moment. I agree with you on that. What do you think about, and maybe Wade Barrett didn't intentionally coin a phrase, but I have a feeling it was a force-fed, let's see if we can get this thing to catch on thing, but with Raquel Gonzalez, Big Mommy Cool, you think that that's going to work, or no?
I feel like tonight's not the first time I've heard that. I feel like I've heard them make that comparison before. I don't love it. I don't hate it. I'm just kind of neutral on it. I mean, I don't think you want to build her as the female Diesel, but do what you got to do.
I like her, and we'll see if that catches on or not. This is the first time it caught my ear, so I very well maybe have sleptwalked through the other mentions of it. But
I almost wonder if that's something that she's like requested that they refer to her as, because that doesn't necessarily make it a good nickname for her. But like I said, I'm pretty sure I've heard it before. So I mean, I wonder if that's something that she wants.
That'd be interesting I'd be curious to know the answer to that myself. In the end, I thought maybe that the ending kind of came out of nowhere, which is kind of fine in these chaotic matches, that I guess it's realistic to think that an ending would come sort of out of nowhere. But it was also cool that the lady who spent most of the time looking legitimately injured not only was tough enough to fight back, but was the one that ends up scoring the pinfall. So definitely a coronation tonight.
Yeah, I thought it was an incredible match and a great opener.
Good opener. Let's move on to the next match, which I thought also was extremely good tag team contest. And that was Imperium defending the tag team championships against Kyle O'Reilly and Von Wagner. And I'll say from the get-go, Imperium was tight, as they always are. They look great. I'm not sure I completely buy as a tag team quite yet. Kyle O'Reilly and Von Wagner, they don't necessarily seem like a natural tag team to me, which I guess maybe foreshadows the end of this. But the match was great. It probably helped to have three really good workers in it, because I did think that it slowed down a bit when Von Wagner would become involved. I think his greenness showed a little bit compared to the others, but there's some good stuff in this.
Yeah, for sure. And even though Imperium has been in the tag team scene for a while, they've won belts, they've been strong. I don't know about you, Kevin, but Fabian Eichner just blew me away today. Like, I felt like, how has this guy been this far under my radar? Like, you've mentioned before that every tag team has a Marty Jannetty. Fabian Eichner is not the Marty Jannetty. Like, he is something else. Like, he took it to another level that I had never seen him do before.
I've been not just an NXT fan. I for better and worse, consume all of it, as much of it as I can, and that includes watching NXT UK from the beginning. So Imperium's been on my radar for a long time, and I've always liked them and thought they were a solid tag team. Like you, though, in my notes, I intentionally underlined and pointed out Eichner here to just make sure I mentioned the fact that he stood out tonight in a way that I
Phenomenal.
had him stand out to me before. He's always been good, but tonight he was great.
Yeah, I agree completely. And I wouldn't. I mean, it's a shame. I know Vince loves to like break up tag teams, and it's coming eventually. I want Imperium to stay together as long as possible, but when the days of Imperium are over, I think he will be something else as a solo talent.
I agree 100%, and he showed why tonight. In many ways, Imperium carried the match, and he carried Imperium, so it was kind of a big showcase for him. Again, Von Wagner didn't do a whole lot to embarrass himself, which is probably a thing that a young talent like him should do. I think he has a bit of a generic look, though, and is still green enough that it kind of stood out, especially considering Kyle O'Reilly is one of the greats right now.
I just also feel like they don't know what they want to do with Von Wagner. I mean, I don't know if you remember a few weeks ago where he showed up on like Raw or SmackDown or something next to Adam Pearce.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah, he was there. He was there for like one day, and then he comes back. And it's like I feel like he's got talent, and they want to do something with him, but I feel like they have no idea what direction they want to take him in.
Well, that might be a good place to pivot here and say that Imperium retain, and then at the end of the match, to your point as to they don't know what to do with him, we had a heel turn. So yeah. We have another. Let's see if this fits Von Wagner, because at the end of the match, the crowd begins a "Thank you, Kyle" chant, a real life realization that Kyle O'Reilly's time in NXT may be done. There is talk that he will be heading to other opportunities if he doesn't re-sign. And so the crowd was acknowledging this. And I think that the writers were playing off the fact that this would happen. Had Von Wagner attempt to turn on Kyle O'Reilly, it didn't turn out so well for Von Wagner because he pretty much had his can handed to him, but he attempted it. So do you think that there's more possibilities for him as a heel?
I mean, undeniably, they're going to make him a heel at this point. I mean, I don't think they do a turn like that without planning on continuing him as a heel. But as you said, I don't know that the program is going to continue with Kyle O'Reilly, because we may have seen the last of Kyle O'Reilly in NXT.
Which would be a shame if not, though, for the fact that the idea of an undisputed reunion someplace where they might get higher on the card, that's kind of exciting, but I guess that's to be determined, right?
It'd be a shame for WWE, but I don't know that it would be a shame for him.
Yeah, or for wrestling fans.
Yeah,
I'm sure that most wrestling fans are excited to see a undisputed reunion over a Von Wagner feud.
And I feel like it's undeniable. I mean, who knows? We don't know what's going to happen, but I feel like it's inevitable. They're leading to that.
They're leading to that. Moving on to the next contest, a little bit of an old school gimmick. You don't see this one quite so much anymore, but it was a staple back through the 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s. That old school hair versus hair match. Cameron Grimes versus Duke Hudson. To me, this was okay. I like Cameron Grimes a lot. I'm not so sure what I think about Duke Hudson yet. But it was over quicker than I expected it to be. And the ending actually surprised me, because there was a lot of rumor and news made over the fact that Vince McMahon supposedly wants Cameron Grimes to get a bit of a makeover and doesn't like his shaggy look. I kind of like the caveman looking Cameron Grimes myself. I think that's part of what makes him unique and fun as a character. But that didn't go down that way. It was Duke Hudson getting his head shaved. Dave, what did you think about the match in general and the booking of Cameron going over?
Well, I would kind of just mirror pretty much what you said. I mean, I feel like this match and the one after this match were pretty much the only weak spots on the card for me. It wasn't a bad match, but it definitely didn't stand out like some of the others. And I don't know how much I care about a hair versus hair match when one of the participants doesn't really have that much hair in the first place.
Well, that's
But
interesting you say that because Cameron Grimes had some of his hair cut. That's what led to this to begin with. So he sort of already had his makeover. He really does look a whole lot less caveman than he did before. And then Duke Hudson, who takes the loss, doesn't really have to change his look at all because he didn't have really hair to begin with. So
yeah, he's got short hair, so they can shave his head, but in about 6 weeks he'll be right back to looking the way he was anyway.
yeah, Cameron Grimes just saved him, $12 down at Master Cuts.
There you go.
All he did. Truly, this had kind of a goofy booking to it anyway. I mean, the whole issue here ended up being over poker and it was just a kind of a dumb feud. I like Cameron Grimes a lot.
Me too.
He gets to go on and do something a little more substantial. I like serious Cameron Grimes. I know it's great when he's being funny, but when he throws the funny in as an aside instead of that being the entire character, I kind of like him better. So hopefully this is the start of a very serious Cameron Grimes actually going for something more than just winning the night on Tuesdays with the funniest bit. I'd like to see him actually strive for a title of some sort.
Yeah, completely. I would love to see him eventually maybe challenge Carmelo for the North American Championship.
That could be some good contest. Again, this one was 10 minutes, so neither man really got to show a whole lot. Probably, I would say it was the weakest match to that point, and then comes the next match. If you're ready to move to the next match, because I don't have very much in the way of notes of this. And it's kind of a shame, too, because these are two guys that are talented, and this was a title match that had a bit of a backstory and build to it. So the fact that this one was a little flat for me was a bit surprising and probably my disappointment of the night. But the NXT Cruiserweight Championship, champion Roderick Strong retained that title against Joe Gacy. Any real thing that stood out to you about this one, David, including the way that it was booked?
Well, yeah, aside from the ridiculousness of having somebody like Joe Gacy go for the Cruiserweight Championship when the guy's probably pushing 260, you your last show, you mentioned something about, 205 Live has kind of gotten away from what it was, and they're having bigger guys on the show. And now I feel like this is just an extension of that. Like, I understand Joe Gacy his whole angle is about inclusivity and all that. That part is awesome, but I just feel like having 250, 260 pound guys going for the Cruiserweight Championship just kind of cheapens the whole thing. Like, just get rid of the Cruiserweight Championship then and either, replace it or rename it or do what you got to do. But it's just dumb to have big guys going for the Cruiserweight Championship.
That's part of what took me out of this one too. But honestly, it's part of what surprised me about the finish because of the way they've treated 205 Live and Cruiserweights in general. I kind of thought that this was going to be the start of the Inclusion Championship and a rebranding of what 205 is about and doing away with the Cruiserweight moniker altogether. And they chose not to go that route, which the purist in me is kind of happy about because I kind of like the idea of a Cruiserweight division. I wish that there was just more thought put into it and more focus put on it. But there's no reason ever for that title to be on the line when the opponent is exceeding that weight limit by not just a pound or two, but by a good distance. So in that way, I guess I'm glad that Roderick Strong kept the title and hopefully can go on to start facing cruiserweights again.
Yeah, and I don't want to get too off topic, but I don't know how you feel about. I was kind of surprised that they didn't kind of change the belt into something else as well. I mean, on one hand, I feel like they don't need to go that route because I don't know if they need another secondary belt in addition to the North American Championship. But I also feel like, is there really even a need for a Cruiserweight Championship? Because I feel like since the rebrand, there's not really a lot of smaller guys on their roster that would fit that division. So, I mean, I almost would be supportive of just scrapping that whole belt altogether.
They don't. They have the North American Championship, so you don't need, with only 2 hours of TV, 3 or 2.5 if you include 205 as part of the brand. You don't need a third singles title, but you also need 205 Live to be about cruiserweights if you're going to keep a cruiserweight championship. And so they do need to put some serious thought into what they want that show to be. I'm fine for it being an extension of NXT because NXT could use more airtime than just one show a week. But if you go that route, you need to be disciplined about what you want the show to be if you're going to call it 205 Live.
Totally.
But this is definitely the skippable match of the night, folks, if you have only a little bit of time. And make sure you tune back in for the main event, which is what we're getting ready to talk about next. Because for me, this was the match of the night. You had Team 2.0 taking on Team Black and Gold, which I love that they went by the Team Black and Gold to pay tribute to NXT's original color scheme as the Black and Gold brand. Tonight, the 2.0 guys go over. But I will say from the jump here, David, that for me, this match, as a framing device, it made more sense than the women's contest, whereas you had alliances that I'm not so sure were really natural alliances in that women's match, and especially when you'd say that we need to escalate this to a War Games kind of situation. I didn't buy it so much in the women's contest as I did here because it's a pretty easy concept to understand, especially if you follow the behind-the-scene things that, okay, we've let tons of wrestlers go. We've completely rebranded and reimagined what NXT is about. Old guys are getting pushed out, young talent's being pushed in. So having that be old guard versus new kids, to me, that was an easier feud to buy into on short notice than the women's contest.
Totally, and it. You kind of knew that it was going to be a passing of the torch moment. I mean, we mentioned earlier that, Kyle O'Reilly might be done with NXT, and they kind of hinted that Johnny Gargano is probably done with NXT at this point as well. And I think, because it's potentially his last, days with NXT, there's a part of you that maybe wants him to win in his final match, but at the same time, Gargano's going to put over the new guys. He's not going to steal their thunder.
That's the old school wrestling mentality of you go out on your back. You just you don't ever go out on a win. You go out on your back. I do like that they had Johnny go bell to bell. I think that having Johnny wrestling Mr. NXT at this point, I mean, he probably exudes the NXT brand more than anyone. To have him start the match and have most of the matches, big moments from the old school side was just a nice touch. In real life, Donnie's contract actually ended December 3rd, I believe, is when it was supposed to end. So his contract ended prior to this event. However, to make sure that he was able to make this event, they did a short-term 1-week extension. So that's where they are right now, that at the end of tonight's contest, Johnny Gargano is officially a free agent, and there are rumors that WWE has quite a nice offer out there for him, but there's also rumors that AEW is making its play as well, and Johnny's sort of in the driver's seat as far as that goes.
Yeah, and I know we're not really talking about AEW tonight, but I'm curious, Kevin, do you know, does he have a non-compete clause, or since his contract has expired, is he open to go wherever he wants immediately?
I don't know for a fact. I would say that he has at least 30 days. Some of these NXT contracts were amazingly short in what the non-compete was. I imagine that he's probably on the shorter side because he's seeing his contract out through the duration as opposed to leaving or being released, in which case those they make sure they enforce those 90 days non-compete. But yeah, it would not be surprising if by, say a February event that you might see him on another TV program, which would be weird because I do associate him with NXT. Before I get into some of the other notes I had about this match, though, David, I will say that even though I know I started by saying that I could buy into this concept of old school versus new school a whole lot easier than I could the women's contest that didn't have as clear a rivalry. It wasn't a perfect fit because I had to laugh a little bit, but when you talk about the bleeding gold and black and the old school versus the 2.0 guys. LA Knight has been in WWE just as long as Carmelo Hayes. I mean,
yeah.
The only reason he's on Team Black and Gold, let's face it, is because he's of a certain age in history in NWA and Impact, and is just not young. But it's not necessarily a easy fit to squeeze him into that whole. Hey, he's an NXT original guy. No, he came around last year.
Yeah, and I do feel like he was signed like almost right before they started these massive layoffs too. Like I almost wonder how happy he is to be where he's at, because he came over here probably thinking, oh, the future's bright. I can start this and it'll be my path to something better. And then all of a sudden, future endeavors everywhere. And it'll be interesting to see how long he's with WWE.
I will say, to my surprise, he has been booked strong.
Absolutely.
These other veterans who will disappear off your TV for weeks at a time, and you think, they're not long they have kept him involved in storylines, and I thought tonight might have been his best in-ring performance yet. I thought that he, other than Johnny, of course, but on Team Old School, he stood out to me more than anyone. There was that great-looking spot where he ran up the ropes and did the German suplex off the top ropes through the table. Of course, Grayson had to take that bump, so kudos to the kid for doing that. But I thought LA Knight looked like a $1,000,000 this evening.
He looked really good. I agree with you that this was probably the best match he's had since he's been in NXT. I also thought Pete Dunne was great too, and just I feel like he was just so brutal in his focused attack on the fingers and the hands. I mean, I know he does that all the time, but it's so convincing to watch. He sells it well, and the people he's doing it to sell it really well. It just and he's one too that even though he was part of the old school, you almost kind of want to see him with the new school guys because he's a really young dude.
Yeah, that is a good call out because, yes, he's been around a long time. He started with NXT UK at the very beginning of NXT UK, but he did so as a 20-year-old. So he's not – I mean, he's definitely closer in age to the guys on Team 2.0 than he is to the average age of the other members of his own team. So hopefully that is taken into account as they move forward. I don't know how they could – well, I shouldn't say that because we see every day with the releases that we don't understand how they could let such a thing happen. But you're 100% correct that there's no one more believable when they decide they're going to break down a body part than Pete Dunne.
And I feel like he's one of those can't miss guys that I feel like, I don't know that he's ever going to be world champion material on the main roster, but he's a guy that I feel like could even break through on the main roster, at least at the mid-card level.
And so hopefully he gets that chance. He did look good tonight. I do think that they did structure the match in such a way from the black and gold side that Johnny got a lot of that shine. LA Knight stood out, of course, as we were talking about earlier. Should mention that Johnny got busted open the hard way. Looked like he might have took a Tony D'Angelo knee, I believe, to the face. For a while, I was worried that maybe he had a broken nose, but the bleeding didn't last overly long. So hopefully he's come out of tonight feeling okay. I thought Tony D'Angelo actually had a couple of moments where he looked like he belonged. He had a big spot where he did a neck breaker on Pete Dunne off the top rope that looked really good. We had some DIY moments, which was great too, to see that reunion. I was a little surprised, to be honest, that of the 2.0 guys, I thought that maybe Braun Breaker, we all know he's going to be the breakout star of NXT 2.0, and he's kind of the golden child. He didn't really get as many moments in the main event as I would have expected. If the women's match really put a focus on Cora Jade, there wasn't a singular focus on a young talent to get somebody over in the main event. If there would have been, I would have expected it to be Braun Breaker, and I honestly thought that probably Grayson Waller took the biggest bumps and most memorable moments. He came off the top of the cage with an elbow drop. He took that suplex we mentioned earlier through the table. Did you think that Braun would have done more than what he did, or did I?
I think he did about as much as he could do in the time that he was there. I think that whole thing comes down to the fact that they chose for him to come in last. I don't know that he would have been the last guy I would have had to enter the ring. I mean, if he's your guy that you want to show off and he's, going to be the face of the brand, I might have had him come in a little earlier than last because by the time he came in, there wasn't really a whole lot of time for him to do that much.
To stand out, yeah, in the way that some of the other guys stood out, I thought.
He got the win, though. I mean, he got the final move for the pin.
That's probably I guess the main point that they want people to come away with is that they end with the visual of your world champion being pinned by the guy we all know is destined to be their go-to world champion. So that's probably what we're supposed to take away. And on that regard, it did look effective. I will say that if there was anything about this match that kind of didn't go as planned, or maybe, not so much a botch, but just one of those funny little moments when you look back on it. I think they wanted him to have like one of those like cool moments by saving him to last, because if you didn't watch, folks, it should be noted that to prevent the other side from evening things up, when Tony D'Angelo came to the ring, he made sure to padlock the cage. So I know it's something we've seen in cage matches for years, when you can't help the poor guy that's stuck on the inside at a disadvantage. But when they had the numbers advantage, Tony locked the other team out, and LA Knight just climbed over the cage. The referees tried in vain, struggled with bolt cutters to get it open, waiting for that big moment when the big muscular Braun Breaker comes down and just breaks it in an instant. Except he couldn't.
He struggled too.
He came down and struggled just as much as all those little 4-foot referees did, which is not what they probably wanted. They probably wanted to see those chains just explode out. Yeah, just him rip the door off and walk in. So that was probably scripted to be a big moment that didn't quite pan out the way that they had hoped that it would.
Yeah, that was unfortunate, because he struggled. I mean, I feel like he tried to snap those things like 3 or 4 times, and they just weren't coming apart. And I feel like even when they finally did come apart, it was just because he yanked the door open. He gave up with the bolt cutters.
Probably would have looked better and even more of a test of strength on his part if he would have ripped open the cage, ripped the door off its hinges to break those chains that way. Probably would have looked just as impressive what he ended up doing. It didn't hamper the match. It's just one of those funny things that pointed out, because really there wasn't a weak spot in this match. I know there's a lot of chaos always in War Games contest, and maybe this one didn't have the same kind of heat that you'd seen in previous main events when you had the Undisputed Era, maybe taking on, some of the big faces at the time or what have you. But I think old school versus new school was a good way to pit these two teams against each other, to give it a little something. And once in the ring, everybody delivered. So I was really pleased with the main event.
Me too. And coming off as a guy who claims to be, an NXT guy, I've watched NXT for quite a while, and been NXT's all, for the longest time has been my favorite brand. And we know that they're not at the level that they used to be with the black and gold, but I do feel after this event that the future for them is pretty bright. I mean, they were almost all of them very, talented in the ring, fun to watch, and if they improve month to month rather than get worse, I think the sky's the limit for these guys. And it may turn out to be that this rebrand was exactly what they needed. Time will tell, but I think they got a good core of guys that are very good at what they do.
I think we knew coming in who they wanted to mint. I think in the case of like a Braun Breaker, that's probably going as planned and on schedule. Maybe someone like a Von Wagner, who they're also pushing almost as hard. They may have learned, and tonight may have also gave them a little pause that he's not quite there yet. With a Cora Jade, I think that she leapfrogged maybe where they thought she was tonight, into maybe trusting her to do even more moving forward, because there's a star waiting there. Overall, a really entertaining night. If even in the misses or the less than spectacular matches, just the booking decisions as to who goes over, the young guy or the old guy, and does that mean anything? Should we read into that as to who's getting pushed and who's getting pushed out the door? It was just interesting, just because it was pretty different than what we were used to. Not better, definitely wasn't better, but it certainly wasn't bad at all. It was good, and probably sets a tone.
Yeah, and we've got just about a month to go before they do New Year's Evil, which isn't going to be on a Sunday. It'll be a regular episode of NXT. But considering they have a month to build what they want to do going forward, we'll see, whether things get a little bit better or not. I mean, I feel like the weekly NXT shows haven't been that great the last few weeks, but after what I consider to be a pretty strong pay-per-view, I'm hoping that the weekly shows will pick up some steam.
Well, it was a good way, I guess, if you're going to start moving towards pivoting from one event to the next, that NXT 2.0, in my mind, had its strongest showing yet tonight, more so than what they've had in the 2 months that they've been around. Tonight was the high point thus far. If you can keep building off that, maybe the future is bright. You're right. And with that, that is pretty much all there is to say about NXT 2.0's very first pay-per-view. If you're watching this on replay on Facebook or on our YouTube channel, let us know what you thought about tonight's event. Did they hit it out of the park? Did they get a base hit, or did they strike out? Did we get it wrong? Let us know what you think. Let us know what your favorite match of the night was. And with that, before I wrap things up, David, I want to first not just thank you for joining us tonight. I want to thank you for joining us multiple times over the last month and a half, helping us out. It's been a pleasure having you around. I appreciate the fact that you have been so amenable to joining us, even sometimes on short notice. It's been a lot of fun.
Well, I love wrestling, and I love watching this show even when I'm not on it. So it's always a pleasure to be on.
And while I'm giving thanks, I was remiss last week. I didn't thank my lovely wife for helping me out both in our Christmas edition special show that we did, as well as the Halloween one the month before. She's been very helpful, as David has been very helpful to help us in this last month when Doug unfortunately has had some issues that's kept him off the air with us. He was actually supposed to join us tonight, was planning on it, but Peacock had other plans, so he was not able to watch the pay-per-view that we were going to be reviewing, which made it sort of a moot point for him joining us. He was excited to come back to the show. We look forward to having him back, but we do want to thank both David and Jerry for helping us out in the interim. But really, I want to say before we end, since this is the last show of 2021, thanks to you guys. Whether you have watched us on YouTube, whether you've watched us on Facebook, whether you've watched us just for a few minutes, or you've watched multiple shows beginning to end, whatever your level of engagement has been with us, it's just amazing to me to think that this is now the second year of the Two Bros Wrestling Show that we're wrapping up here. And whatever part you have played in that, the likes, the comments, the supports, the views, we just really appreciate it. We are wrestling fans. This is a lot of fun. It's better because of you guys and the feedback that you give us, and we want to keep improving and want you guys keep coming back. So we can't thank you enough for your support of the Two Bros Wrestling Show. And with that, before I sign off, I will say we're back on Sunday, January the 9th at 8 p.m. That's when we are live. Again, this is the last show of this year, and in the 2 years we've done this, one of my favorite shows that we have done to date was the first Two Bros Wrestling Award Show. We did that last January, where we gave out our awards for the previous year. So now we're getting ready on that return in January on the 9th. It's going to be the second annual Two Bros Wrestling Shows Awards edition. So Performer of the Year, both male and female, Announcer of the Year, Comeback of the Year, Match of the Year, all these things that are just so fun to talk about, argue about.
Guest Host of the Year.
The guest host of the year. It will be between you and Jerry, and Jerry's going to defend herself now. So I think you're getting those votes. We're going to be putting up some things in the interim, folks. So even though we won't see you live till January 9th, we'll be providing content that we hope you stay engaged with on our Facebook channel, as well as giving you some previews of the categories and things we're going to be talking about, so you can begin thinking about who your choices are and let us know. And with that, I will say again, thank you, David. Thank you, everyone, for watching. Thank you for watching this year. Merry Christmas. Happy New Year. We'll see you on the other side in 2022.